Okay, welcome to another episode of Talking Metaverse. I'm here now with Mr. Jeremy Dalton. How's it going, Jeremy?
All is well here, Tan. How are you?
If somebody asks you, somebody new, what do you do? How do you respond?
I say that I lead the Metaverse Technologies team for PwC UK, and that involves helping clients across different industries to implement virtual world technologies such as virtual reality, augmented reality, and blockchain, and add value to their business. So it's a bit of a long-winded one, but it's about as short as I can make it.
In your experience, when you meet people that are not really in the industry, how aware are they about what's happening with the development of the metaverse?
I'd say not very. I think just generally there is a lot of education to be done for us and everyone else in the industry that's not in the industry. So yeah, I would say we're still at the very beginning stages of trying to get people to understand what exactly we mean by the metaverse, and I'm not sure we're any closer to getting to a definitive point on that. And maybe that's kind of the idea. You know, the metaverse is not necessarily a very strictly defined term, but more of an aspirational vision which lies on a spectrum of virtual world type implementations in both the consumer world and business.
So, can I put you on the spot and ask you, give me your one sentence definition of the metaverse?
One sentence on the metaverse. So, the metaverse comprises a collection of virtual worlds inhabited by real people who are free to explore that world and interact with each other, and in a way that allows them to create new experiences and build new digital assets. So the world is constantly evolving. How's that sound?
Love it. Especially, yeah, the first part, you said collection of virtual worlds. I like that.
Yes, I think it goes to the point that we're hopefully not headed towards one single world owned by one single company that has a monopoly over the virtual world space or the Web 3.0 space, but more of a collection of these worlds that adhere to the sort of vision of interoperability, in that we'll be able to move assets and identities and data between those worlds.
Mm. And that reminds me of one of my favorite tweets that you made recently. I think we talked about it. Um, you did some research on, can you talk about it? The one about the word meta and what you
Oh,
found out.
yeah. So that was not research conducted by me personally, but it was.
But you dug it out, you found it.
I dug it out and I started promoting it because it was very interesting. It was actually done by a company called Sortlist, and I found it through Statista. Basically, it was a survey that was done on a number of investors, so people that have invested already in the metaverse, and it asked those individuals or those companies what their definition or what they thought the metaverse was. So most people,
Love this.
38% said it's a virtual world, and yeah, that's, it's a good start. The disappointing thing is the next 21%, so the second largest group of people that answered the survey, voted, or the second most popular answer was it's Facebook's new name. So unfortunately, it shows a little bit of confusion there, and perhaps we need to applaud the Meta marketing team for promoting that and combining in people's minds the metaverse and Meta as a company. They seem to be conflated in a lot of people's heads.
I love that. So just to repeat again, a significant portion of people who are invested in metaverse companies think the metaverse has something to do with the company Meta. Is that what it
Yes,
was?
they think that the metaverse is Facebook's new name.
Okay, the metaverse is Facebook's new name.
Yes.
Awesome.
About 0.53% of people in that survey were actually being honest when they said, I just don't know.
Wow. That's a surprisingly low number of honest people in the investors. So what do you think about that? Facebook being called Meta. Do you think that's like, for example, Netscape or a company putting the word net or internet in their name 30 years ago?
It
It,
seems to be fairly analogous to that. But to be fair, I think a lot of companies did do that. As you said, Netscape Navigator did a similar thing. Um, Internet Explorer, I suppose, took the name Internet and attached it to another word, Explorer. So that's interesting, actually, if you go back in history and think about all these different organizations and how they've kind of adapted words that related to Web 2.0 or even Web 1.0 back in the day, the first generation of the web. And so maybe it's not as surprising as it should be to us.
yeah, and if, not just, if you think about like the word web today, what company wants the word web in their title, right? Like
Yes.
something web or something net. So I'm
It feels
wondering
very dated right now, doesn't it?
exactly. So I'm guessing the metaverse, when it does appear, it's not going to be known as that, or you know something new that we haven't seen. It might not even be called the metaverse.
Yeah, it might just be, it might just be the way that we work and live, with no real name given to it, or even if a name is given to it, perhaps it's subsumed under the original term of the internet, and it just becomes part of the internet. I think there are a number of directions it could go, and many of them may result in the term metaverse just completely being dropped as a sort of special way to describe this third generation of the internet.
Hmm. Okay, so now your official job title you used to describe yourself earlier, Head of Metaverse Technology at PwC.
And that was very deliberate, because the reason it's not head of metaverse is, well, first of all, it's a pretty arrogant title to be head of the metaverse. And second of all, I think it's important to recognize that there are lots of technologies that underpin the metaverse. I mentioned a few of them before: virtual reality, augmented reality, blockchain. And we don't only explore the metaverse as a concept of a virtual world inhabited by real people,
Mm.
that can interact with each other, but we also explore standalone applications that use virtual reality and augmented reality, and blockchain as well, without necessarily any connection to a wider virtual world full of people. So I think it's important to distinguish that through the term metaverse technologies rather than the sole term metaverse itself.
And the natural question has to be, what does PwC have to? Why do they care about metaverse?
So PwC's mission is all about building trust in society and solving important problems. And we work with businesses all over the world to do that. The reason why the metaverse is important is because it and its constituent technologies have the potential to solve a lot of important business problems, and also to build greater trust in society. I mean, there are still some question marks over technologies like blockchain and whether that does indeed provide greater trust as a decentralized system over some of the centralized models that we have implemented nowadays. But it is strong enough in the public space as a developed or a developing technology that it is of interest for us to explore, to experiment with, to introduce and test with organizations, and really push the boundaries of what this technology can do in business to really squeeze out as much value as we can for these organizations across different sectors. So really, it's all about adding business value at the end of the day. And these technologies are tools that enable us to create some very clever, innovative solutions that can solve problems in potentially a better way than we've done so far with traditional solutions.
Can we talk a little bit about your career as an author?
Sure.
So, how many books have you written?
So I've got two books published at the moment. One, and both of them are on virtual reality, augmented reality technologies in business. One of them I was the editor of, so that is being published by Springer and contains sort of deep dive case studies on VR and AR applications across different industries. The other one is published by Kogan Page, and this is called Reality Check, and it's all about dispelling myths around the technology and also showcasing and outlining the value of the tech in business across all these different industries all over the world in a very simple to understand manner. So in a way that anyone, doesn't matter how much, even if you have zero knowledge, even if you don't know what virtual reality or augmented reality even means, you can pick that book up and you can get a good understanding of what it is and what it can do in business, backed by real life case studies of different companies and different sectors all over the world.
Do you find that the people that you just mentioned, who have zero knowledge of what it means, do you think when they find out, is there an immediate pushback? Because I find that it's not something that immediately they think is something worth spending time and energy over.
Yeah, I'd say when I initially talk to people, some people, definitely I get pushback and skepticism, and you'll always find groups of people with that view. The I guess in a way that's why I have the book written, because it condenses all of the supporting evidence from so many different places and so many different arguments together in one place for people to get a better understanding and hopefully reduce or eliminate a large part of that skepticism.
So, what's the most common skeptic argument? Is it the fact that it's a game, entertainment?
I'd say that's a real key one. Yeah, most people think it's just a entertainment or a gaming device or technology, and the reason for that is understandable. Most of what people hear about the technology in the mainstream media is that it's a gaming or entertainment medium. So with augmented reality, you used to hear about Pokemon Go quite a lot. With virtual reality, Beat Saber, obviously a very famous example in the mainstream media. Or you see YouTube videos of VR fails, so people with a headset on that are falling flat on their face because they got confused between the virtual world and the real world. So yeah, I mean anything that's humorous or sort of super exciting or novel or fun gets pushed in the media, and people pick that up and they ascribe that view to VR and AR as a result. But the fact is, it has so many applications in business, they just don't get talked about in the mainstream media because they're not really fun, exciting, or viral worthy.
Yeah, exactly. So, can we go back a little bit to how you first, do you remember your first experience with AR or VR? Like what made you first excited about this?
So I can't say that I had a grand plan from a young age, but the very first time I actually tried virtual reality was in must have been the mid 90s. And it was in Dubai, where I grew up. And it was an arcade that had set up, it was kind of like an arcade pop-up that had set up in a shopping mall. And this guy, I remember what the machine looked like. It looked like one of those machines that was produced by Virtuality Systems, or W Industries produced a group of systems called Virtuality in the 90s. And this was actually a company out of Leicester in the UK. These were kind of the first foray into mainstream virtual reality as an entertainment device. And I'm pretty sure this was a reskinned version of one of their systems, or it was a knockoff, one or the other. Either way, I was inside this thing, I was standing up, I was wearing one of those super chunky, heavy headsets with a whole octopus rig of pipes coming out of it. And I had a single controller in my hand with a trigger and I think a button at the thumbstick. If I remember correctly, that was actually it was a 6 DoF controller and a 6 DoF headset. which was very impressive for the time. No doubt the system cost, maybe even $100,000 potentially. But I had a great time playing what was probably something equivalent to a futuristic Wolfenstein. So really sort of pixelated graphics, sprites for enemies, and pretty laggy. I'm surprised I didn't fall sick after it. But
You said mid-90s, right?
yeah, that's right. That's right.
Wow. And then from there, like, so you remembered that.
I remember that, but that wasn't sort of the moment when I said, yes, I'm going to specialize in this.
Yeah, there's no career in this back
No,
then.
I actually started my career at PwC in 2011 as an auditor, believe it or not. And I then did a
Amazing.
whole range of things. I did business recovery for a few years. I did innovation consulting, both internally in PwC and externally with clients. And then since about 2013, I started to. This was around the time when Palmer Luckey put the DK1 on Kickstarter, the Oculus Rift DK1. That was in 2012. So around that time, 2013 maybe, I started campaigning in PwC for to start up a dedicated virtual reality, augmented reality division, and it took many years. It took until 2017. But in 2017, I was finally given the remit to run this dedicated virtual reality and augmented reality team in the firm. And the rest is history. We now have a large team here in the UK, which is supported by colleagues in the US, in Italy, and the Middle East. And we've got a great global connection between all of these teams going on. And in fact, just a few weeks ago, or back in May 2022, I was in Dubai for our annual XR Summit, our third annual XR and Metaverse Summit, as we now call it. And that brought together 14 different territories from around the world to align on the value of the metaverse and XR technologies and what it can do for business. So things have grown certainly in the last decade, and it's been a really amazing journey, and hopefully it will still continue for many years yet.
Wow. And you were an auditor working for PwC, and you were pushing for PwC to look into this in 2013. I mean, that's forward thinking. I mean, you that's very visionary.
Maybe I give myself, or maybe you give me too much credit, Tan. I think maybe it was less visionary and more that I wanted to do more fun stuff and less auditing. And
Awesome.
thankfully, I fell into the right technology in the end.
Hmm. Okay, so forward, what's required from your opinion? What's the next step that needs to happen for just the next step that needs to happen for it to become ubiquitous?
Yeah, so for the technology to really be adopted at the next level, and don't get me wrong, the technology is on a good adoption curve. We can see the growth there. Standalone headsets were a massive inflection point in the growth of the industry. So for those who don't know, to get a good VR experience back in the day, you had to be connected up to a powerful computing system, so either a computer or a console or something. And those were called tethered systems. And then came along standalone systems like the Oculus Quest 1. And that opened up a whole new world, because all of a sudden it became simpler and cheaper to have a good virtual reality experience. So I think that was massively important. The next step, I think the next inflection point is going to be in terms of the usability and comfort of the headset. So I'm talking about a minimization in the size of the headsets, an increase therefore in the portability of it, better weight, so either lighter or better weight distribution between the front and the back. We're looking at things like making it easier for glasses wearers, so potentially being able to change the diopter on each individual lens by adjusting the handle on each one. And then perhaps we're also looking at small things like being able to flip up the visor to quickly change between the real world and the virtual worlds. Other interesting elements might include things like arranging. There are small things like in some of the newer systems, you've got fan noise which takes you out of the immersion. I think that needs to be resolved. You've got situations like the battery life. I mean, 2 hours is not good enough. Currently, it's not a massive issue because it gets uncomfortable before 2 hours anyway. But I think in the future, we'll definitely need to have a battery life longer than 2 hours, which is going to be tough given that virtual reality is all about running a screen constantly at a high refresh rate. But I have faith in the in the engineers of our world to bring something interesting to light.
So do you think we're going to be spending more and more time in a virtual world? If the technology allows it, do you think people will spend, like, where's the limit? What do you see?
I think so. I think if you consider that Web 3.0 is the next generation of the internet that we're all moving towards, don't get me wrong, virtual reality headsets are not a mandatory component of that world, but it's certainly the most immersive way to experience the metaverse. So I think a lot of people will want to have that high level of immersion, of fidelity, that sort of next generation or next level experience. And I think that desire will drive a greater amount of time spent in these headsets, even though you can access the metaverse on desktop systems too.
What is it about escaping this world to an alternative reality that attracts humans? If you thought about this, you must have.
Yeah, I do think about this, and I think it's quite easy to understand actually when you think about things that we do in our everyday life to escape. I mean, some people read books and they get immersed in worlds through the text on pages. Some people watch films and they get engrossed in the story presented by this incredible picture and sound system. Some people get lost in their own mind where they conjure up pictures and worlds and daydream about things. And all of these are a form of escapism that are very natural and increasingly becoming a part of our modern world. And this is kind of the next generation of that. This is the way to take that to the next level. So I think there's something inherent in human beings to want to escape reality. And this technology can assist with that. Saying that, it sounds very dystopian, but as with all things, there is a balance to be had, and everything in moderation at the end of the day. So I would be disappointed if people spent 12 hours a day in virtual reality, but equally I don't think there's anything wrong with spending a few hours a day in VR.
Yeah, it does sound a little bit sad if we use the words escaping reality. I like to see it as exploring an alternate reality.
Exactly. I think that's a good way to think about it, and it makes it sound like our world is not worth living in, which I'm sure you could take the view on based on things that are happening all the time all over the world. But there are always good things to think about in the world as well, and I'm an optimist in general, so I tend to concentrate on those good things. And I think the technology, at least virtual reality, tends to be a very agnostic technology, in that if we don't take into account the sort of motives of some business decisions behind it. So the things that are coming to my mind are, potentially things like advertising in virtual reality to increase revenues from organizations that are connected to that world. If we don't consider those principles, but consider the technology just on the basis of by itself, in terms of this is a way to immerse yourself in alternative realities or alternative worlds, I think it's a very agnostic form of escapism that there's nothing wrong with on the surface, as long as we control and safeguard against the dangers in the right way.
And then you have to notice the obvious path we're on, which is we're trying to recreate reality, right? In higher resolution, more detail. So then the obvious question becomes, what if this is already created? The old simulation theory.
Yes. And to be honest, I have thought about that as well. And my personal opinion is, who cares? if this is a simulation, it's a pretty good one. As long as you are enjoying yourself, what's the issue? Whether it's a simulation or not, does it really make a difference to your everyday life? And even if you were guaranteed, even if you were if it was proven that we are living in a simulation, what can you do about it really, other than to make the most of your life within the simulation? So that's what I'm trying to do at the moment. I'm trying to make the most of my life in a potential simulation.
Yeah, great point. So, if it's a game, then play it well.
Exactly. And get the high score, get all the achievements, have all the experiences, and then bow out until version 2 releases.
Awesome. Okay, so last couple minutes, can you tell me what's in the immediate future for you personally or for PwC? Like, what are you working on right now? Anything that you can
So
share?
yeah, right after this recording, I'm going to go upstairs in our more London office, and I'm going to investigate how our testing of a portable volumetric capture system is going. So for those who don't know, volumetric video is a form of media which effectively records a three-dimensional
Princess
version of
Leia.
someone. Yeah, exactly, like a hologram, but one that you can import into a virtual reality experience, an augmented reality experience, a 3D application of any sort. So we're trying, but usually to get really high quality volumetric captures, you need to go to a dedicated studio. What we're trying to figure out is, can we produce, we'll never produce that level of quality using, the 8 or so cameras that we have for this portable system, because studios will use 100 plus cameras. But if we can get it to a level which is decent, then that could be an interesting part of the volumetric video market for us. So that's something we're exploring, and I want to test upstairs right after this.
Oh man, what a fun way to spend an afternoon.
I'm looking forward to it very much.
Well, Jeremy, thank you for taking the time to do this. I don't want to
My
hold you up
pleasure, Tan.
from having the fun afternoon.
No
So
worries. I'm on the edge of my seat already.
awesome. Well, I hope to see some updates on that. Are you gonna tweet
Oh
some?
yeah, I'll put something else on social media, definitely.
Cool. We'll be looking out for it.
Thanks a lot,
Thanks
Tan. It's
again,
been a real
Jeremy.
pleasure. No worries. Bye, everyone.